Hello. Let's see. Sound. Okay, looks like we've got something now. We had a little problem with the sound in the first attempt I did this. So let's try it again. Oh, let's re-aim the camera. I don't like that way the camera looks. Let's see, turn that like that, like so. In the tiny bit. Then we come over here. Up there. Hello, one. Okay, well. Okay, let's see how that feels. Trying out a bunch of new equipment so I can hopefully do a decent job in live streaming my sewing videos. We had a horrible time last summer using the webcam, which are not very good at all. So let's see how this goes. So, anyhow, hello everybody in TV land. We're going to try to make some decent sewing live stream videos. Now, let's see, the sound is still low. Let me just try something. Is that going to be... Okay, let's see. Hello, one. Hello. Okay, I'm going to make sure the sound... Okay, I can probably bring that up some more. All right, let's see. That goes up. That goes up. That goes up. Okay, let's see how that feels. All right. Let's see. If I talk in a normal voice, can television hear me? Okay. I think that's better. Okay. It's gonna be a lot of work to figure all this out. Got new computer, new microphone, sound mixer, video switcher. Got 4 microphones if I need them, because the disaster we had was using a microphone built into a laptop to capture sound throughout the whole room between the sewing machine, the serger, the cutting table, and doing my modeling. And it was just terrible. It screeched, feedback, hum, buzzing, stuff like that. So I've made hopefully the right investments in especially sound and a better computer, a newer computer, because the computer would freeze up, the video would freeze up, do weird stuff. Let's see how long this holds up. As you know, I make my own clothing, and I try to be very creative. And matter of fact, today I had an interesting day. I went to a place here in Bellingham called the Radical Fairies, which is a non-profit here that helps people learn sewing and dressmaking as a trade. They work closely with what's called WorkSource here in Bellingham. WorkSource is an agency of Washington. It works with the State Employment Agency of Washington State. So if you get laid off from your job, they help you find another job and help you get training if you need training to get a skill that's more pertinent than what skill you may have had. And Rag Finery works with them, but they also get a lot of leftover fabrics from people who had been doing custom clothing, doing upholstery, home decorating, and stuff like that, and they have extra fabric. They give it to places like Rag Finery, and we get fabric at a pretty good discount there. This is 2 yards of brand new, fairly luxurious tapestry upholstery fabric. 2 yards of it for $10. Brand new. This would be about $40 or $50 per yard. They sell it by the pound. It's a great source for fabrics. It's the most decent fabric store that we have here in town. The only other fabric store is Joann's, which is not all that great. A good source, however, surprisingly, is the thrift stores. Goodwill here in Bellingham, along with Good Friends and a few others, you'd be quite surprised. If you look in the place where they sell linens, household linens, like tablecloths and bedspreads and things like that, I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see what's there. The fabric here, this, hard to see it in this light, but the red fabric right here and right here on my shirt came from a brand new tablecloth that was still in its original store packaging. So somebody must have gotten it as a gift and decided they didn't want it, so they donated it to Goodwill. And you'd be surprised. There is a lot of stuff at Goodwill still in its original store packaging, including clothing. I saw a dress that was in the iconic Nordstrom store plastic bag when you buy a garment at Nordstrom. That bag had not been opened. You know darn well that dress was not even worn once before whoever had it decided to give it away. So they can be a good source of some interesting fabrics. It is a very much hit and miss. I could spend 2 hours in there and not find anything. Go in 2 weeks later and end up dropping $50 for maybe 6 or 7 tablecloths, 4 or 5 runners, and maybe some brand new, mind you, high-end luxury fabric shower curtains. Not the cheap plastic ones, but the luxury fabric shower curtains you find in a really nice bathroom. And take them home with me, and they're a very, very good source for some of the design for my clothing. So between them and Rag Finery, I find some really unique stuff here for fabrics, including what I have over my lap right now. I have to be very careful in buying fabric online because you can't feel it like you can in a store. But there's some places I know that I can trust to get fabrics that are specific, and I'll buy a small amount of it first, then of course buy whatever I need. So I have been making all of my own clothing now since 1995. The whole career started when I wanted to make myself a clear plastic raincoat, and I needed a new hobby. So I went to a sewing store and bought a sewing machine, just like that. Took it home with me and started on my own No classes, nothing except for a couple of very, very old, long out-of-print books I get at the public library. And it took a while. I learned on the most difficult material, which is clear vinyl. It would slip, it would stick, it would crinkle, it would break needles, you name it. I mean, it would take me 9 hours to make a simple raincoat, and I'd have to set it aside as not one that would be worth wearing in the public in the rain. It took me about 6 or 7 raincoats, several weeks before I had something that I'd be willing to wear in public. Now, with that being said and done, and learned to sew on the hardest material, sewing clothing was easy. And I started making clothing. My very first piece of clothing was a shirt, a dark green shirt. That was 1995. I still have that shirt right now, and I do wear it on occasion, although I try to be careful with it. It is a artifact of my hobby, and when I do wear it, though, people ask me, "Oh, did you just buy that at wherever?" They think it's brand new, and I say, "No, I made it 25 years ago." And they say, "Huh? I don't believe that. It looks brand new." So I still have that, and still have a few of the garments I first made. But I realized it became natural. It was just something that just, even though I've only done it, I started doing it in 95, I felt like I fell back into something I'd done earlier. Maybe I did it in a previous incarnation. Maybe I was I don't know, a queen seamstress in in a previous incarnation. I don't know, but it seemed to fit right in. And what's interesting is that hobby was completely developed on my own, self-taught, no classes. I tried to go to one class. I ended up falling asleep. The hobby also spawned off others. Woodworking was one. Fused glass was another one. Metalcraft, and metalcraft, and now of course working with LEDs and lights and doing glass engraving. Now, the woodworking was an interesting one. My father did woodworking, so I had some exposure to that, but a lot of the techniques and the mental processes came from my sewing. Even though woodworking is a different hobby than sewing, but many ways they are the same. You are constantly solving problems. You're taking large problems and you're breaking them into components. And you're taking each component and solving it as itself, then putting the whole thing together. There's also the creative process. You have an imagination. You have something you think you may want, and you think it's going to go this way. But it exists only here in my dreams or my imagination. But then as I start to try to manifest it with my hands, I learn to accept the fact that it's not going to be exactly as I envisioned it here. And it took a while, but I had to accept that art or crafts may not always, in fact, most of the time, will not manifest the same way as it was in your dreams. Once I've accepted that, then the hobbies became more fun and more challenging and more satisfying. The woodworking I did when I was living in Arlington, I bought about $12,000 worth of tools over the course of a year. I made furniture for my siblings for Christmas. But then I decided, after a year and a half, that unlike sewing, the majority of the things I made, I could not wear going out and about on the town, going out for the evening, or in the gay pride march, or whatever. So I decided when I moved from Arlington, Massachusetts, back to Seattle, that I would give up woodworking and go fully back into sewing, but maybe, just maybe, looking for something else. So after spending $12,000 on sewing goodies, woodworking goodies, I gave them to two places. I gave them some of it to my former high school. I also gave some to an art center here, not here, but down in Seattle. And because they were donations to nonprofits, the IRS was very generous to give me back some, probably because of my tax bracket, close to $4,000 to $5,000 out of that $12,000 investment, which is fine. But of course, the $12,000 also, there was the reward of a very satisfying hobby, a learning process of doing the problem solving, the breaking down the problems, and visioning, helping me learn to vision more accurately what I see here and what I'll end up out there. And after woodworking came fused glass, using a kiln to take pieces of colored glass, arrange them and fuse them together to make platters, to make decorative plaques and stuff like that. Again, lots of problem solving, but more of the creativity, working and blending with colors. Patterns were first simple, but then I would make something like a scene of a boat sailing on a lake on a platter. So one Christmas, I made each of my siblings a big, dinner platter, which was a pattern of colored glass. I have come to realize that in Seattle and in Portland, there is an enormous presence of fused glass, but I wanted to stand out. So I gradually morphed or mutated out of fused glass, concentrated on my sewing and using as many diverse fabrics as I could. I started to use upholstery fabrics and drapery fabrics. Home decorator fabrics have a lot more diversity in color schemes, in textures, and using tapestry and what's called a jacquard. A jacquard is a woven pattern that's over and above the colored pattern of the fabric. So I really got heavily involved in that in the early 2000s when I was living in Portland. We had some wonderful fabric stores. But then I discovered metal, welding. Again, I went to a welding supply place called Airgas. Airgas, the manager of the Airgas facility on 82nd Avenue in Portland. I owe him a lot. He let me cry on his shoulder for 2 years with lots of questions about TIG welding or gas tungsten arc welding, and he helped me. I bought a welding setup from him, and on my own, I learned how to do TIG welding or GTAW welding, which, by the way, is one of the hardest forms of welding to learn because there is nothing automatic like a wire feed or anything like that. You have to manually work the torch, manually work the amount of power with your foot, and you feed the feed rod with your hand. It's not an automatic feed like MIG or wire feed. So I did all that on my own, and not only that, I did it in my apartment, in the living room of an apartment in Portland, mainly because I did not have a shop, a garage, or a basement to do this work, so I had to be exceptionally careful not to start a fire, and of course, improper ventilation. That lasted, oh boy, for at least 2006, 2016, probably about 9 years. But along with that, I learned how to take items like silverware and silverware and bicycle sprockets, bicycle parts, and use them in sculptures to make things out of them. Like I would make a necklace with a bicycle sprocket and some metal rod or pieces of silverware that looked like a peace symbol, a band of bombs symbol, or a lambda for gay rights. I do stuff like that. I did a Star of David. I did a pentacle. I did many things. And those were things I could wear along with my clothing. So that the glass, when I did the infused glass, I would make small pieces about the size of a playing card. And with design, I'd wear it like a necklace. Okay, so it'd be stuff I can wear out in public. And same with the metal. And then, along with the metal, came lights, LEDs. I've learned about LED technology at the time. So I would embed LEDs in some of my metal pieces I would wear. So I would be wearing lighted jewelry. Along at the same time, I've learned about light tube and electroluminescent wire. So I made some lighted clear plastic clothing where the light tubes were sewn into the seams of the clothing and shine. I did that. But then I started into glass carving or glass engraving with diamond tools. So I take a piece of, a piece of decorative beveled glass coming from an old chandelier, and I'll engrave figures, either figures of people, figures of buildings, whatever, onto the glass, and then I would light it along the edges with different colored LEDs. So I could create scenery in multiple colors in the glass. And by the way, if you want to see pictures of it, just go to Allyn, ALLYN.com. That's my artistic journal. Or look up Mark Allyn, again, ALLYN, on YouTube or Vimeo, where I make my videos. And I've made numerous videos about making things and how I make my stuff. So, very interesting stories. We can go back to the clothing career. Really momentous time there. Was the first time I made something for everybody for Christmas, starting, I think, in 1995 and 1996. The first ones were simple. Placemats out of upholstery fabric with the edges sewn down. Just very simple. I made each person a set of 4 placemats, okay? Another example would be a fabric tote bag that I would make. And they were very, very, very much appreciated. So that started a career of making each sibling and my parents, when they were still around, something each Christmas, each and every Christmas, starting in 1995, all the way up to right now, 2000. Christmas is 2000, in the middle of the pandemic. I made everybody a pouch to carry their money in. Made 4 of them. I have 4 siblings, so that was funny. A really momentous time, both as a success but also a bit of a tragedy. 1995, I was living in Arlington, Massachusetts, and that's when I had my woodworking hobby. And I'd made a piece of furniture for each sibling plus my parents and a dear friend of mine, 6 pieces of furniture in my woodworking shop. But when I was all done and said, and those pieces of furniture were hauled off for Christmas, it was about 3 weeks before Christmas, and the company I worked for, Bolt, Bernick, and Newman, which, by the way, is one of the research companies that created the ARPANET, the predecessor of the internet. That's a whole story of its own. By the way, the second B, Bolt Beranek, Dr. Leo Beranek, he was on my childhood paper route. I've known him since I was 11 years old, long before all this stuff happened. So, I was a computer analyst at that firm for a couple of years when I was living in Boston. But the firm, Bolt, Bernick, and Newman, was a supporter, a major supporter for WGBH television. If you haven't heard of it, WGBH television, which was a educational television station and a PBS television station, they made over, I believe, 10% of the program that we see on PBS, Public Broadcasting Service, here in the U.S. About 10%, maybe 20% of the programming was created by WGBH. They were the largest powerhouse in PBS program creation. They also, like all public TV stations, hold a fundraising auction, or did at the time, and I was a volunteer at the auction, but they also had pledge drives. And because BBN, Bolt, Bernick, and Newman, was one of their biggest sponsors or supporters, or I guess they call them underwriters, we were invited to be part of the holiday pledge drive for 1995, which means they would select employees to be on the phone bank. So we would be on television, on WGBH, answering phones for the pledge drive. And they told us to be festive. Fortunately, they told us 2 weeks ahead of time about this, so it gave me 2 weeks to make a new outfit, and that's my famous red and green Christmas outfit. And boy, it took exactly that 2 weeks. I mean, I started the day after they told us about it, and I finished the day before the event happened. So what I'm going to do now, I'll disappear a little bit. I'm going to try to find at least the shirt for that outfit. Excuse me, I'll be right back. Okay, let's get my... Getting a little chilly in here, but I have to leave the heat off, otherwise the sound of the furnace will cause the sound my voice to be very difficult to be understood. So here is a red and green shirt. The shirt itself is red, but the pockets and the cuffs and the plackets and the collar were green. Now, I also made a pair of pants that were the opposite. The pants were green, but the outline of the pockets and the cuffs and the belt were all red. So green pants with red shirt with green. And as I said, I finished this thing the night before the event. So I put it on, went to WGBH, not having one iota of a guess of what to expect. It went over very well. Everyone loved it. People who would call to make their pledges would ask, can you ask that guy where he got that shirt? I was seated on the second row, but plainly in view of the cameras. And of course, this was WGBH, a major TV station in Boston. And what's interesting was the contrast with the green and the red essentially caused the TV cameras to go into an LSD trip. They were jittering and flickering and stuff like that. The cameramen loved it. The staff loved it. All the other volunteers loved it. The people in the audience loved it. I mean, it went over very well, way beyond my own expectations. They also had a company Christmas party, like companies did, and I wore it there too. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, somebody at that party offered to buy this off of my back, literally buy it off of my back at a party in a hotel in downtown Boston. I said, oh, thank you, but I really don't want to walk out of this hotel with nothing on a cold winter night in New England. So anyhow, so that was the fun part. Then, I think it was a week later, it was a week later, like 2 weeks before Christmas, the Boston Gay Men's Chorus does their festive holiday concert in Provincetown. Now, for those of you who don't know, Provincetown is like here. You raise your fist. This is the Cape. The Cape looked like somebody's arm. Provincetown right here, right at the end of the fist. And my parents, by the way, where I was raised, were in Buzzards Bay, which is the armpit of Cape Cod. But right there at the tip is Provincetown, P-Town, one of the best known LGBTQ resorts in the nation. It's the same league as Fire Island, Key West, some of the others. I mean, if you step off the ferry onto the streets in P-Town on a summer evening, you may hear nothing but foreign languages. So, at Christmas time, they dress themselves up like a Christmas fantasy land. Think of the Bavarian Christmas villages, or even Leavenworth, Washington, where everybody dresses up, they dress up their homes and their shops, and it is a living Christmas postcard. Provincetown is the same. Beautiful little shop, beautiful decorations, lights by the millions, choirs singing carols, bell ringers, Santa Clauses, children with their eyes glowing like 1,000 stars. and the Boston Gay Men's Chorus was part of that whole thing. So I figured, okay, I'm not a singing member, but I'm a volunteer with them, and we collected the tickets and we showed people where they seated and stuff like that. So I was a volunteer at the door collecting the tickets and ripping them in half and giving half back. Now, they performed their concerts in Provincetown at a beautiful, quaint little white New England postcard building called the Provincetown Town Hall. That building alone is worthy of a Hallmark postcard of its own. Typical old-fashioned, white-clappered New England Town Hall. What can be more perfect? So here we have the beautiful building and the quaint, beautiful town. Just before Christmas, with the holiday concert about to begin, and here's this man at the door, dressed in red and green, just like a Santa Claus, collecting the tickets. The people loved it. I mean, I think somebody offered to buy the darn thing off of my back. But come on. I am not about to be nude in P-Town in the middle of a postcard on a cold winter evening. An enchanted evening, but still a cold one. So I had to pass on that. That was fine. Everything was beautiful. Until 3 days later. They have the rehearsal because they were getting ready for their main formal concert at Jordan Hall, the New England Conservatory of Music. And I show up to help set up the chairs, and we prepared the food for the break in rehearsal. That was fine, except the house manager. Now, the house manager is the person who's in charge of the ticketing and the audience, stuff like that, unlike the stage manager or the producer who run the show. The house manager, in public, mind you, decide to chew me out for wearing something very inappropriate as an usher for the Boston Gay Men's Chorus. He thought I should have been in a tux. There are two things wrong with that. First of all, the chorus members themselves were all festively dressed. And they never told me I was supposed to be in a tux. I think he either had jealousy problems, which I can see, or the way somebody put it, a friend of mine, that he had more issues than Time, Life, Look, Newsweek, Post, Fortune, Popular Science, Popular Mechanics, Boy's Life, whatever, all the magazines combined. I just don't know. But anyhow, enough of that. This outfit still lives very strong. I do only wear it at Christmas time or very, very important occasions. It is, of course, now 20 years old. And the pants are way in the heck too big. I've lost a fair amount of weight since that time. But you'll see me around Bellingham right around Christmas time wearing this outfit. People like it here. So there's that story. Very interesting oddball story in Portland. After I discovered lighted clothing and embedded lights in my clothing and my jewelry, I went to a fundraiser for the Gay and Lesbian Community Center in Portland, and I decided to wear one of my lighted jackets over my colorful clothing, okay? It was in the ballroom of what was called the Nines Hotel, which was on the top floors of the Meyer and Frank building in downtown Portland. For those of you who are in Portland, that used to be the Meyer and Frank store, then it became Macy's, and they shrunk. They sold the upper stories of the building to this hotel. So, nice ballroom, formal ballroom, wonderful event. It was for the Gay and Lesbian Community Center, very, very worthy cause. So, now, the Radical Fairies, they loved it. That's the group I'm involved with. Very, very original, artistic gay men who let their true selves shine, okay? Don't conform to anything. The drag queens. Actually, the drag kings, the woman who likes to dress as men, the drag queens, the men who like to dress as women, and the transgendered. All those people, they loved it. They really loved it. The lesbians loved it. The straight women who were there loved it. The straight men who were there loved it. The absolute lowest on the totem pole on appreciation of this kind of hobby were the non-radical fairy, non-drag queen, non-cross-dressing, cisgendered gay men. This hotel room, like many, would have the big, huge windows and had curtains, okay? And there'd be a space between the curtain and the window about 2 or 3 feet, like a little alcove. And the curtains are generally pulled closed at night, okay? Make the room more cozy, intimate space for this very nice, intimate, festive occasion. I think that was around Christmas time, too. Again, colored lights, stuff like that. But anyhow, I noticed this very well dressed, very formally dressed suits, black ties and whole 9 yards, gay male couple who were kind of ignoring me. I mean, they would perfectly turn away when they would never face towards me and never acknowledge me. I wave at them, they turn around and look the other way. But I noticed if I was to kind of meander around the hall, work my way toward the part of the hall that they're in, they would go behind the curtain at one of the windows. So they would be in the alcove between the curtain and the window. If you understand what I'm saying, that they would be concealed from everybody else in the room. Now, if I were to step away, I did a little experiment. I stepped away to the other side of the room, and after 5 or 10 minutes, they would kind of wander back out from behind the curtain into the room, kind of, hang around over there with their friends and whatever. But then I would, for the fun of it, start to meander, looking innocently meander over toward them, and they would once again kind of work their way behind the curtain in the alcove between the curtain and the window. I guess one can write a whole PhD dissertation on that one. So that's a kind of a funny one. And everybody else, some of the gay men ignored it, but at least they didn't hide behind the curtain. Come on, why would you hide behind the curtain? Either they did not like to see me, or they did not want to be seen in the presence of me. They feared that someone would see them in my presence and think of bad things. I don't know. Weird. Okay. Well, another weird one, okay, that I may have to close. It was getting late and starting to nod off. Let me do a quick check here. I'm going to make sure my sound is coming through. We've been having sound problems, and it looks like it's okay. I'm listening to YouTube on the sound on my sound monitor, just to make sure. We had a weird problem, but anyhow. So, 1982, at the height of the start of the AIDS crisis. They called it GRID, Gay-Related Immunity Deficiency. Before that, it was called the gay cancer. Legions were discovered on the skin of otherwise healthy young gay men. The major cities, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, LA, the major cities saw it first, and it started to percolate out into other cities, okay? And being what is the word I'm looking for? Being the one who is obsessed with safety and being careful, a fetish for safety. It's, call it a fetish for safety, okay? I knew something was going on. I knew I had to be very safe. But yet, I also had my fetish in clear plastic. And I figured, okay, let's put the two fetishes together and try an experiment. So I made, now this was before, oh boy, let me think about this. This was before I learned how to sew. So I got a few clear plastic shower curtains, and I used an iron. I remember right, either an iron or a hot electric light bulb to fuse the plastic together, to melt it together, to create seams of the plastic melted together. It took me a long time to do this, and I think I had to throw one away that didn't come out right. I probably went through about 10 shower curtains and cleaned out Bed Bath & Beyond, or maybe it was Jordan Marsh. I don't remember who it was, Emporium in San Francisco, whatever. I cleaned them out of clear plastic shower curtains. I mean, these guys must have been wondering, what in heck is this? How many bathrooms does this guy own? Let's see. So, that's what I was saying. I carefully, using an iron or a hot electric light bulb, made a raincoat that had no buttons or zipper in the front or back. So it had no openings, except obviously for the long sleeve and the neck opening with obviously a bonnet or a hood, okay? So I covered my head except for my face, of course. But the front had no opening. So essentially, a large clear plastic body-size condom. But it would pass easily as a raincoat. I would wear it out in the rain with clothes on under it. Now, mind you, I want to make things perfectly clear. Yes, I like to wear clear plastic clothing, but not to be naked under it, but to let the beauty of this art, my homemade clothing, let that shine in the rain to be protected. Now, so it served well as a raincoat. So it was a legitimate garment. But it also could serve as a body-size condom to protect me against the HIV virus. Mind you, this was the time before AZT, the first drug that was applied, the first AIDS drug was really around. So, just for those of you who don't know out there, a gay bathhouse is a place where gay men have sex. I'll say that, okay? I'll say it again. A gay bathhouse is a place where gay men have sex. And you usually walk around either naked or, if you're a little bit modest, you have a towel around your waist, nothing else. And you're looking for somebody for a quick sex with, okay? So I decided to carry it further with the little thing I made. So I went to the locker and took my clothes off, and then I put this whole, pull-over clear plastic raincoat over my head, over my body, until I had it on with the hood on, because, and then here I am, naked, probably the first time ever, totally naked in a clear plastic raincoat. Now, very weird. It's actually not very comfortable, very clammy, unlike wearing it with clothing under it, but it was very unique, and the symbology was there. I'm protecting myself, and I'm protecting my others from the HIV virus. You know, a good crossing between two fetishes, clear plastic and safety. Okay? What happened? I was asked to leave. It did not happen once, it happened twice. If I'm not mistaken, it almost happened the third time. That's a weird one. I'll talk about that later. But anyhow, they asked me to leave for attempting to protect myself in a unique way to let my beauty shine through, but to stay protected. Okay? San Francisco, San Diego. The third one was years and years later in Portland, Oregon. This is an interesting one. I did the same thing there, more for the fun of it. Actually, for the same thing. And it was one of my real raincoats I put together. It was not pullover. It had the snaps, the whole 9 yards. One of the attendants asked me to take it off. 2 other attendants told him, leave this guy alone. Which means, told him to leave me alone. They let me wear it. I've worn it there on several occasions, until, of course, later on I moved up here to Bellingham. Now, I want to finish off by saying that, despite all that, I do want to say that here in old little town of Bellingham, the reaction to these things I've been making has been universally positive. All over town, no matter where I go, volunteering at the Spark Museum, volunteering at the Makerspace, volunteering at the Community Boating Center, activities with the Unitarian Church, going to wherever, the doctor's office, going to going out and going to the theater, going to parties, doing anything. Both before and during COVID, I would take long walks around town almost every day. People would comment or compliment my clothing and thank me for wearing it. So I'm really, this has been really more than met my expectation. I'm really happy with the appreciation that I am being shown here. It demonstrates that we are open-minded here. Very interesting sidebar to that. As far as I know, and I've done a fair amount of research on this, there is no place that requires a coat and tie here in Bellingham. In fact, the only occasion you're required to have a jacket and tie that if you are an attorney in a courtroom. I had an attorney tell me that. But that same person told me, no, there's nothing else requiring a jacket and tie. That cannot be said of Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA, or anything else. They would have restaurants and or private clubs that require a coat and tie. The one place here, interesting, the one place here that I thought would not let you in without a coat and tie is the Bellingham Golf and Country Club. However, they were hosting a charity auction for art, and I wanted to check out the art to see if it would be a suitable place for me to donate my glass and metal art. I rode my bike there, and I figured, okay, all they can do, they can ask me to leave. I'm wearing my homemade clothing. No problem whatsoever. The guests loved it. The guests at the event loved it. Even some of the staff loved it. Total and complete acceptance. If the country club would accept it, then I know darn well there's no problems at all here in this town. So I think with that, and it's getting late, and it looks like the sound is working, everything's working okay, I think I'm ready to go, and sometime soon, watch Reddit Bellingham, Nextdoor, or Facebook, or the Radical Fairy email listserv. I'll get it out as much as I can. I will be doing live streaming here in my living room, which is also my sewing room, with the new equipment, hopefully to have much better sound and much better control of the video and better lighting. Be a couple of days, a few minor things. I want to make sure that the sound is okay. It bothered me that the sound didn't work my first attempt tonight, but let's see how far we can get. I want to try to break it. If I can't break it, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to do it in Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. 3 platforms that I can feed off of Restream. So, with that all said and done, I'm going to say I love you all. Good night.